Um, all right, so the Transportation Authority has been administering a half-cent sales tax for transportation for over 30 years now, starting with the Prop B sales tax in 1989. Our website includes a lot of information on projects that have been made possible by the sales tax and the impact that those projects have had on people's lives. In 2003, the voters extended and updated the expenditure plan when they passed Prop K. And this past November, the voters extended and updated the sales tax expenditure plan again when they passed Proposition L. To develop, did I skip a slide? Yeah, I think we're good. To develop the details of what would become the Prop L sales tax, we worked with a community-based 30-member expenditure plan advisory committee. And at the end of that process, the expenditure plan advisory committee voted to recommend a detailed expenditure plan for the voters to consider. In November 2022, of course, the voters passed Proposition L by nearly 72%. So now at this point, it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work implementing it. Prop L directs $2.6 billion in sales tax revenue over 30 years to transportation investments citywide and in every neighborhood. There are 5 main categories within the expenditure plan that are shown here on the slide. Within those 5 categories, there are 28 total programs. The expenditure plan includes details on the kinds of projects that can be funded in each of these 28 programs and identifies the eligible project sponsors like SFMTA, BART, Public Works, and the Transportation Authority. A lot of those 28 programs in Prop L are similar to what was in Prop K, but there are some new programs and some that are reconfigured as well. And we'll get into more details on those. As we get ready to identify the specific projects to fund, we are updating our Prop L revenue forecast, which was based on projections that were made in 2021. We have received a new projection from our consultant that is lower, and this updated projection is based on the latest data and takes into account the current economic picture showing a slow pandemic recovery in San Francisco. We believe it is better to err on the side of conservatism for budgeting and programming purposes, and we hope that when we update Prop L in a few years with new projects, the revenues will have outperformed our expectations. So now I will run through a few slides detailing the types of projects that can be funded through each of these main categories. So the first is major transit projects, which are designed to make system-wide improvements to ease crowding, improve reliability, and increase rider capacity on Muni, BART, and Caltrain. This funding is critical for those projects to help attract and leverage state and federal competitive grant dollars. Just like in Prop K, the transit maintenance programs are collectively the largest part of the Prop L sales tax. BART, Caltrain, Muni, and ferries are eligible for repair, replacement, and upgrades, as well as enhancements that provide a more customer-friendly experience. Similarly, paratransit remains the only portion of the sales tax that is for transit operations, and Prop L does dedicate more funds to paratransit than Prop K did. The streets and freeways category continues to invest significantly in street safety for all road users. This program has broad eligibility for many different types of investments, from bike and pedestrian safety improvements, traffic signals and signs, safe routes to school, street resurfacing, and curb ramps. We also have a new transformative freeways and major streets program, which can fund planning and community engagement to help reconnect communities where freeways have cut through, for example. Finally, is the Transportation System Development and Management category, which has a handful of programs that will be administered by the Transportation Authority, including a new edition of our successful neighborhood transportation program, and a newly created equity priority transportation program and development-oriented transportation program. So the takeaway here is that Prop L bumps up funding for neighborhood level and community planning, and this all seeks to set up a pipeline of projects that can be implemented with Prop L funds or successfully seeking competitive grant funds. So the expenditure plan that the voters approved has those broadly defined programs and eligibility requirements, and sets up basically the buckets of funds for specific projects. But now we need to get to work determining what those specific projects are. So the process is that project sponsor agencies such as SFMTA, BART, and those others I mentioned will be submitting project proposals to us. And our job is to select projects to recommend to the Transportation Authority Board to be funded over the next 5 years. And this process will repeat every 5 years to make sure that those projects are fresh and that they reflect the current context. So the expenditure plan requires that we consider certain things when recommending projects, such as the urgency of the project to say coordinate with another, like a street resurfacing project might coordinate with a sewer project. And also the level, things like the level of community support, like was this project identified in a community plan? We also consider other factors like the leveraging of other funds beyond the sales tax in order to stretch those sales tax dollars further. It's also important to note that the project selection process will keep in mind the goals of more broadly of San Francisco, especially as expressed through San Francisco's long-range transportation plan 2050, just to make sure that we are implementing goals that have previously been identified. Now, the reason that we're here today, of course, the reason that we've convened this meeting is that we want to hear from you. So we will go through a few areas of Prop L that are new or that we've heard a lot of interest in, and we'll ask you questions about your priorities that will help us determine what to fund over the next 5 years. So the first Prop L program that we want to discuss is called Safer and Complete Streets. Under the previous sales tax, Prop L and Prop K, excuse me, many of the types of projects you see here, such as traffic signals, bike lanes, and others were funded through separate programs. So there was like a separate bucket of funds for pedestrian improvements and a separate bucket for bike improvements. The Prop L expenditure plan that the voters approved recognizes that some of these projects that say, we'll redo a whole street corridor may include many of these different types of improvements. So broad eligibility is helpful. However, we still need to make decisions about what to fund with our limited tax dollars. So given the types of eligible projects that you saw on the previous slide, what types of projects within this program are most important to you and your community over the next 5 years? So if you want to raise your hands within Zoom or unmute yourself, we can have a discussion for this item. Does anyone have any feedback?
Yes, I do, Richard Rothman.
Go ahead.
They give money, but why does it take, I work for the city. I retired from the city, so I know city bureaucracy, but maybe you should, I live in the outer Richmond and we need safety improvements, and Supervisor Chan gives money to fund 2 projects, but it takes MTA and Public Works so long to do the projects. And I know the city bureaucracy, so maybe you should hire more staff or find, set deadlines that the money has to be spent. And I want to see the money go to Fulton Street. Fulton Street's the International Speedway, and they did improvements a couple of years ago, but they still need improvements. The residents need to feel crossing Fulton Street is safely. So those are my 2 concerns, is how to get the money to the shovel in the ground faster and prioritize neighborhood projects over downtown, because nobody's coming back to downtown, or not yet. So, that's where the action is in the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that input. I see, Brian, you've got your hand raised. Go ahead. Oh, it looks like you're still on mute here. I think I can unmute you. There we go. Go ahead.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry. It sounds like your sound is really difficult to hear.
better.
It's very difficult to hear. If we're not able to figure it out, you're welcome to type your comments into the chat window. I'm not sure what else to do. Well, while we're waiting for Brian, Dylan, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. And yeah, I'm Dylan Fabris. I work for San Francisco Transit Riders, and just wanted to pop in here to learn more. And I'm not sure if, well, I guess first of all, I think just about everything on the list from the last slide is really important, I think. And I hope that CTA has like Vision Zero in mind as they're developing these policies, looking at the the corridors on the high injury network, and really doing as much as they can to slow traffic down and make things safer for bikers, pedestrians, transit riders. I think something, and I correct me if this is not the right bucket to put this in, but I think something that's missing from this list is bus bulb outs, that like bus islands, bus boarding islands, things like that to make bus passengers more visible and get them kind of away from behind rows of cars and things like that. And then also specifically on the T3rd, I know that sometimes it's faster to take the bus than to take the train, and sometimes cars will be speeding by the bus will get stuck behind traffic, get stuck at red lights, pretty much like as soon as it gets out of the dog patch. And if we're talking about underserved communities, the Bayview needs a lot more investment and improvements in transit infrastructure. And I think something like transit priority signaling there would go a long way and speed up the T, which would have improvements up and down the whole line.
Great, thank you for that feedback. Brian, I see you were able to rejoin. Do you want to try giving your feedback?
Yeah, is that better? Is that better?
It might be a teeny bit better. Are the note takers able to hear okay? Maybe just try to speak slowly and clearly.
Mike, this is Maria. I believe he wrote his comment in the chat. Perhaps you could read that out loud.
Oh, great. Okay. Sorry, my Zoom went to full screen and now I don't know where the chat is. 1 second.
I can read it for you, Mike.
If you don't mind.
Sure. From Brian Springfield, it says, I believe some funds were spent exploring improvements to Jane Warner Plaza and the crosswalk between that plaza and Harvey Milk Plaza. If the study is complete, I'd like to see funding directed to construction.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, so District 8, at the recommendation of our chair, we have allocated, the Transportation Authority allocated some funds for a planning project at that location, and it's actually just getting underway. So there is no, so it's definitely not complete yet, but we will definitely note your feedback and your recommendation to support implementation of future projects there. Okay, so if there is no other, no further, oops, I think I gotta do my presentation here. Okay, you should be able to see my screen again and we can move on. So our next, the next program we want to hear from you on is a little bit more abstract. The Prop L expenditure plan includes a program called Transformative Freeways and Major Streets that I mentioned. And one of the goals of this program is to reconnect communities and repair harm caused by past freeway and streets projects. This program was important to members of our expenditure plan advisory committee in their discussions and may help us pursue federal funds that are intended for similar purposes. So what might a project that reconnects communities look like? Here are a couple of examples. They include simplifying freeway interchanges or addressing that the Geary Fillmore underpass. Those are just some examples of what a project might look like. But again, what we're here for tonight is to hear from you. So are there specific projects that you think can help reconnect communities and repair harm created by past freeway and streets projects? Of course, any major project like this would include extensive community involvement from the get-go and throughout the entire process. So we'd be happy to hear from anyone who would like to provide feedback on this program. I see a question. How do I raise my hand? So there should be in the bottom of the Zoom window. Let's see, what is the, I think I have a different view because I have the presenter view going. Apologies. But
there's an option.
Sure.
There's an option for reactions that you can tap on, and then you can raise your hand there.
And since we have a relatively small group, if you're having any technical difficulties, please just go ahead and unmute and go ahead.
I don't know if I can talk.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, I live in the Bayview. I'd like to back up because I'm sorry I couldn't figure out how to get in on the last one.
Oh.
There's some really big issues here. One of them is that the T can be very unreliable. We have almost no digital readouts on the platforms. I don't know if that's everywhere or that's only here. The platforms that seem to get the most work and attention are the ones in the dog patch, and the ones in the Bayview just don't. Also, the trains are unreliable. I'm not sure what's up with that, but that kind of is what it is. The other part of our big transportation hangups out here is 3rd Street. We have bicycle people on there, and if you've ever come down 3rd, particularly from Evans to Sunnydale, it is very, very narrow, so it's extremely dangerous. We also have the strangest signal timing I've ever seen in my life. So talking to my neighbors and also watching people drive, people generally run the red lights all the time, and the worst offenders are the people on bikes. So it's very, very dangerous. And I don't know the answer to help deal with that, but it's kind of scary. In terms of the freeways, I hope that people will not be thinking that we shouldn't in some ways be hooked up from the Bayview to the rest of the city, coming off 3rd Street and going to places like Bell or Van Ness or whatever, because we are on the edge of the city. So even though people may feel that some of these freeways should be taken down or revamped or whatever, we have issues with being able to get to other parts of the city. And unfortunately, that was something that was never really looked at or addressed when they decided that they would close off Golden Gate Park to traffic, so that it's very hard for people here, say, to get over there, except on the 44, which is a very, very long ride. Sorry to talk so long, but I wanted to just get all that in.
We appreciate your feedback. Thank you. Evelyn Graham, I see you have your hand up.
There we go. Yeah, I guess I want to piggyback on the previous speaker. My thought was I would like to see the southeast part of the city connected to Golden Gate Park as well. When you put in the promenade and took out the parking, it made it extremely difficult for those people, some of whom are in lower income districts, to get to Golden Gate Park and enjoy whatever there is they want to enjoy. I also would just like a point again that when you took the Central Freeway down, that made beautiful Octavia gorgeous, great improvement in that area. However, what you did as a result is you put all that traffic that used to be on the freeway on the streets of the city, and now you're trying to control the traffic in the city. So I think I agree, you need to really think twice about what you're doing when you're taking down freeways. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you for that feedback. I don't see any additional hands. Does anyone else have thoughts on this particular question? Dylan?
Well, yeah, I guess I'll just add on, like, I think it would be great to see improvements to the lines connecting the Bayview to the rest of the city, because it is just preposterous how long it takes to get from the Bayview to pretty much anywhere else by transit. So, you know, routes like the 29, 28, rapid for both of those, and the 44, I think are desperately needed to speed up those buses and make them more reliable. And more connections to parks too. Golden Gate Park is beautiful, and it's a shame that anywhere in the city is like an hour away from it by transit.
Thank you. Joshua, did you have an additional comment?
Yes, I would like to say one other thing. In talking to people in the neighborhood who use public transportation and looking at how people use it, I don't know if people have noticed, but the Central subway has been a bomb for us. We all still go over and take the number 8 bus because it's fast, it jumps on the freeway. The Central subway takes almost nobody where they want to go. And a lot of people do not want to make that crazy change downtown, which must have been thought up by somebody with who never takes public transportation. Some of the older people from this neighborhood, they're not going to drag themselves all the way over there and get on the train if they're downtown. They can just jump on the number 8 and be home. So please, please, please try to be rational in what you do and not, I'm sorry to say this, but bend a political whatever that got that built, because I've been on there a couple of times, and yes, I've seen some tourists, but I haven't seen a lot of people from the neighborhood. Whereas when you're on the 8 actually needs more buses. It is so packed. So you may not understand that because you don't live out here, but please, please, please look at that before we waste gazillions on whatever.
Thank you for that feedback. So unless there is anyone else, we can go ahead and move on. So Prop L also includes a new equity priority transportation program that envisions funding planning efforts and providing matching funds to outside grants for implementation projects. Eligibility is very broad for this program, as it can fund projects that are eligible for any other Prop L program, including projects that help reduce disparities and gaps, whether physical, geographic, or affordability, and equitable access to jobs and key services. This program can fund projects that are in specific equity priority communities or citywide efforts, such as equity evaluations. So what opportunities are there for transportation plans that advance equity, either at the neighborhood scale or citywide? Similar to what I mentioned for reconnecting communities, projects funded in this program would be driven by community priorities. So Evelyn, I see you've got your hand up. Please share your thoughts.
I see you listed several neighborhoods, and I wonder, are any of the southeastern neighborhoods that we just talked about on those equity priority programs planning?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is an official designation called an equity priority community that's approved by the Transportation Authority Board, and we have a map available on our website, and I can share it after this presentation also. So that's an official designation, but it's but this program is, also intended to perhaps conduct citywide efforts that focus on, that focus on plans to advance equity. So there is very broad eligibility that way.
And I would put the Bayview ahead of the Western Addition for public transportation. Thank you.
We will note that. Does anyone else have feedback on this one? All right. Well, if something strikes you, feel free to raise your hand. So finally, in this series of questions, Prop L requires that the project prioritization process, among other things, requires that it look at the level and diversity of community support. Oh, Brian, did you have a question on or a comment on the previous one? Or, oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, as we're prioritizing projects, Prop L requires that we look at the level and diversity of community support for projects. Projects with clear and diverse community support, including from disadvantaged populations, such as communities that are historically harmed by displacement, transportation policies, and projects that utilize eminent domain, people with low income, and people of color. Projects identified through a community-based planning process will also be prioritized. An example of a community-based plan is a neighborhood transportation plan, a corridor improvement study, or a station area plan that is community driven. So this is kind of a long preamble to a very simple question. What specific transportation projects are most important for you and your community? So you don't have to think about the city broadly. What's most important to you and your community? I saw Richard's hand go up first, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the previous slide.
Sure.
I had my mouth full. What makes it, I didn't see anybody, I don't know if anybody from MTA is on this call, but, the board can set the priorities, but MTA can do whatever they want to do, They're just a free-spirited group. So you could, the CTA can pass all the things they want, but that doesn't mean MTA has to follow the, unless you're going to withhold the fundings and say, no money unless you do this. And maybe you should do that and hold MTA accountable and maybe not give their funds or give their funds piecemeal. So MTA will, they don't have to listen to the public. They can do whatever they want. And, I was listening to the previous slide and what make, I don't know, is MTA is how's the CTA going to make MTA, follow these ideas, which I think are great. And the other people had great ideas about the Bayview, but, they put in the T line. So what, I don't know, you need to have a hammer over their head. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. And Brian, I see you've got your hand up as well. Please go ahead and share your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm talking on my phone. Is that better?
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm the executive director of Friends of Harvey Milk Plaza, and we've spent a lot of energy and effort doing community outreach and community engagement and building community-wide support for the project, which we now enjoy. So I would like to see funding to the components of the Harvey Milk Plaza improvement project that are transportation and transit related. As many of you know, the Harvey Milk Plaza, what people think of as Harvey Milk Plaza, was actually built to be the station entrance to the then new Castro Muni station that came online in 1980, but it wasn't named Harvey Milk Plaza until 1985. So it's really struggled to function as a plaza, as a gathering space, without compromising the efficiency of the station. So there needs to be some investment in reconsidering the design so that it can function both as a commemorative space and as a busy transit hub. So like, and there's a SFMTA project happening there. It's actually going to break ground, I think, in July to install an elevator, but it's not addressing other code compliance issues like the main stair to service the entrance has wavy stairs that don't meet current building codes. There's really poor sight lines that's leading to some behavioral issues at the site. On and on and on. There's even discussion and preliminary planning around improving the bus onboarding and offboarding area at Market Street that has access to that new elevator, and leveling out the street there so that it can be used by paratransit services. So I feel like our project, it's got a lot of different facets to it that I think fall into a couple different buckets, but it's definitely a project that the community has been trying to see realized for well over 2 decades, and there's finally a vision now to do it with a lot of community support.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your priorities. Does anyone else want to speak to projects that are important to their community? Go ahead, Shosho.
Hi, I had read about this a while ago, and it may not even be happening. Is there going to be a switchback for the T at like 23rd or something? Does anybody know about that?
I'm not familiar with that. That's something we can follow up and
No, well, I'm asking for a specific reason. It was because the people in the dog patch wanted it. And I didn't know, again, I'm trying to advocate for my neighborhood. I didn't know that that was particularly helpful to us in the Bayview. There is a switchback, not an official one, but they do switchback sometimes at Williams, which is fine for me because then I can walk home, but it doesn't get people all the way to Sunnydale, and I'm not quite sure why they do that. But again, if some of that could be worked out, smoothed out, whatever, so that we really could be utilizing the whole line down to Sunnydale, that would certainly be helpful.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone else who has priorities for their community that they'd like to share? If not, we can move along. I think we are getting near the end here. When I saw it, there's a comment from Dylan in the chat that Dylan says, I believe SFMTA has said they have been trying to cut down on switchbacks on the T and running more service along the full line. All right, well, so this is kind of a catch-all question. I know that we have not touched on every single program within PropL that I mentioned. So this is an opportunity. Is there anything else that we've been missing from this discussion that you would like to share? I see if no one has their hand raised yet, we do have a question in the chat. I'll go ahead and read from Roland LeBrun. Question for the Bayview folks: would fast and frequent rail service on Caltrain tracks between Bayshore and Salesforce Transit Center help if there were a couple more stations? And if so, where? Paul Avenue, Oakdale Avenue, Cesar Chavez, or question mark, question mark, question mark? So I'm not sure if anyone would like to respond to that, but while you're thinking about that, I'll go ahead and ask Shosho to give her thoughts on anything else that it's missing from this discussion.
2 things on Caltrain. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know, since most people are on the T line and they're also not going to Salesforce. They're going to other places. It's a possibility, but then again, how do you use your resources? So I don't know about that. The other thing that's really hard, and again, this may be system-wide, what happened to the upgrade for Next Bus so that we have something that does work, that we can find out if the trains are coming, if they're coming on time, what time they're coming, whatever. I don't know if anybody on this panel uses that, but it's been either, I don't know, glitchy or down for so long. I have no idea, but again, it would certainly be nice in this tech heaven that we live in to have something decent in terms of, you know, having some system installed that worked for everybody, so we would have a clue when trains and buses were coming.
That's a great point, and thank you for sharing. I see Dylan. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I'd add on just, I think bus stop improvements in general, really all across the city. There are a ton of bus stops that don't even have signs, let alone benches or bus shelters or the prediction signage. Would love to see some more investment in that. And then also just I believe that none of this money can be used for operational funding, and you correct me if that's wrong, but you mentioned for paratransit only. So
That's correct.
I think, you know, as SFMTA and other agencies in the Bay Area are facing these fiscal challenges in the next few years, we'll have to be creative about how we can use our capital funds like Prop L to make the system more efficient and cut down on costs. So things like bus-only lanes and improvements like I mentioned earlier, bus foldouts that can make buses faster and more reliable, so that some of that cost can get so that more service can be run with the same amount of operational money. So I guess that's something I would add. And I think we should lean into improving bus service, even if it means slowing down traffic a little bit, because ultimately we need better transit to meet so many of our city's goals.
Thank you so much for sharing that feedback. Is there anything anyone else would like to add? We're basically wrapping up our feedback slides here. So do feel free to raise your hand and share your thoughts if you'd like to. Otherwise, we can go ahead and start wrapping things up here. All right, not seeing any other hands. I just wanted to share that you know, we want you to know that this feedback that you're providing is, oh, I see Andrea has a raised hand, and I did see your comment in the chat.
Oh, you did. I think you need to change the text to white. You
Yes.
just can't read it.
I just wanted to, Andrea's referencing something has gone wrong with the formatting on our online survey, which I will mention, and it's totally illegible and unacceptable, and we will make sure that that gets fixed as soon as we can. So apologies for that. It's you know, poor timing for a website error like that to pop up, but thank you for pointing it out. And I actually saw a couple of other comments. Shosho says, I forgot that the seating on so many of the T platforms is missing or unusable. Can these be replaced? And someone else has given that a thumbs up. And Teresa Shaw has mentioned, if you look at the SFMTA budget, they are allocating $2 million in 23-24 to traffic calming on Page. How is this justified when there is an anticipated to be huge transit deficit? You might get more responses if people actually thought anything they prioritized might happen. So thank you for those thoughts in the chat. So as I was starting to mention, we do want you to know that this feedback that you're providing is not just going to be put on the shelf. We are sharing this with our partner agencies, and we will be looking at how the projects they're proposing over the next 5 years compare to what we've heard from you. Your feedback will ultimately flow into the funding recommendations that are considered by the Transportation Authority Board. And then in terms of next steps, As just mentioned, we have released an online survey that has similar questions to what we've discussed tonight. And we will be discussing this update at our future board and committee meetings. And we would also be happy to present at meetings that organizations you belong to may be hosting to gather feedback at those events. And with that, I'd really like to say thank you for participating in this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I know this is a very wonky topic to be discussing, so just wanted to say thank you again for your time and your participation. And see a question, is this presentation online? I think this, we have not posted it yet, I believe, but that's certainly something that we can do. That's a good idea. All right, well, if no one else has any questions, I think we can wrap up this meeting. Brittany, I believe you are the operator here. Do we have any other breakout rooms that are still going?
Nope, we're good to end.
All right. Well then, thank you again, everyone. And Brittany, you can go ahead and end the meeting when you're ready.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good night.